As the world continues to get more and more expensive, I think one of the things that the reptile hobbyists will begin to look for even more and more is the ability to do things for cheaper. And one of the easiest things you can do, I shouldn't say easiest, but one of the probably most commonly searched things to do is how to build your own enclosures or just build your own organization systems in your reptile room to help you save some money. And in this episode, I'm talking with Chris of Reptiles and Oddities. He's on Instagram and YouTube. And we discuss, the beginning of the conversation is more about his history, but then we discuss his DIY projects. So he walks us through how he builds a very basic 4x2x2, which is, very standard size enclosure. And the method he walks us through is simple and cheap. I think he says it ranges between 120 and 150 American dollars to build all in, including glass and tracks and everything. And the system that he talks about can easily be expanded to larger enclosures as well. So if you're somebody that's a little bit handy, this episode will be very good for you because you can just literally go out today, go to Home Depot or Lowe's and build your enclosure. Or it should give you enough knowledge to ask somebody, a friend or a family, or even hire someone to build you enclosure for relatively cheap with the plans that Chris talks about. And we also discussed this, what I believe is an ingenious idea for creating a rack system to hold 20-gallon aquariums. So it's essentially, and not aquariums for fish, but the 20-gallon breeder tanks, I guess you can call them, for reptiles. One of the questions that we always talk about, people always message me, is I want somebody to invent a rack system that allows you to incorporate proper lighting. Well, the rack system, I even hate to use the term rack, but the rack system that Chris talks about that he built in his reptile room is exactly that. It uses these 20-gallon breeders as the base, and then he walks us through how he has them on sliding drawers and how he's incorporated lighting without having cables getting messy and pulled and all the different things. So anyway, that's a fantastic part of this conversation. So if you are somebody that wants to get your hands dirty and build, as well as save a little bit of money, then that part of the episode will be for you. And we also discuss, which I think is an incredibly important part of this episode, is how to build relationships with the wildlife officials in your area. That may not sound like an exciting topic, but I think it's one of the areas that will allow us to continue to do what we do as responsible reptile keepers. And I'm not going to go into it in detail because Chris lays it out perfectly. He's a salt of the earth kind of guy, super honest, and is someone that learns practically with his hands, so you just know that everything he's telling you is through his own experience, which I think is some of the most valuable information someone can give. So, without anything further, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I will catch you afterwards. Zoo Med is one of the most recognizable brands when it comes to reptile lighting, and later on in this episode, I want to tell you more about one of their products that will allow you to simulate both a sunrise and a sunset, which in my opinion is one of the coolest things you can do with your reptile lighting. So if that's something you're interested in learning about, make sure you stick around through the rest of the episode and I will tell you more about it then. This podcast is all about improving your reptile husbandry. However, I know not everybody has the time or the money to go out and spend thousands of dollars doing custom builds. Thankfully, friend of the podcast, Josh Halter, aka the Bio Dude, is working hard to make better care more accessible. He makes turnkey bioactive kits for leopard geckos, ball pythons, tortoises, invertebrates, dart frogs, and the list continues to grow. He has spent years testing and perfecting these handcrafted substrates and dietary supplements to create the most effective products. If you visit thebiodude.com, you will see he is a proud supporter of both USARK and responsible reptile keeping, and there is an option to donate to either at checkout. Cool. Well, Chris, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dylan. It's exciting to be a part of this.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a while, so I'm happy we finally found a day that works. And I kind of want to start almost in a morbid place, and that's with Rattlesnake Roundups, because I think this does, maybe I'm guessing, but I feel like it probably has some impact on your reptile story, and I think most people listening probably are aware of what these are, but maybe I'll get you to give us a rundown of what they are just for those that don't know. But then you have the experience of being at one, which I think adds another layer of it. So can you tell us, for if there's anybody listening that has no clue what that is, tell us where that happens and what it is, and then I'd love to hear about the memories that you have of them.
Okay, so when we're talking about the Rattlesnake Roundups, they're going to be divided between the east and the west. The old Rattlesnake Roundups, they're in the east, that focused on timber rattlesnakes like your canebrakes and your eastern diamondbacks. Those got switched from a slaughter to more of a conservation-based kind of ordeal for the rattlesnakes and other wildlife that's there. But over here in Oklahoma and Texas, we still have the slaughter going on. Like Sweetwater's the real big ticket in Texas. Um, I've never been to I've been through Sweetwater when I've been trucking, but I've never been to that snake hunt. But I've heard the stories that come out of there. Like, the only thing that's different between the Texas ones to the Oklahoma ones is they would have the buckets of the rattlesnake blood and let kids finger paint with the blood.
Oh my gosh.
Um, but the ones I've been to, like in here in Oklahoma, Rorica is like 3 hours from me. My stepdad was not a fan of reptiles at all. He always thought a good snake was a dead snake. If I had one in the house, it would sense its fear and it would get out and chase him. Kind of those stories. So, or he is kind of that kind of person. So I don't know why we went to this. I think it was more because I don't know. I don't want to get into that kind of subject with my stepdad, but we went to the snake hunt over in Eureka. I remember I took a picture with a rattlesnake around my neck, but the lips were sewed shut.
Mm.
And I was trying to buy the rattlesnakes. I remember that. I knew what was happening to them. We did not go to the slaughter because they do that on Sunday, but we went on a Saturday, came back. But when before I was a teenager, I moved up to Winoka. And if anybody in Oklahoma knows about these snake hunts, they know Winoka's the oldest one, going on like 60 years now. Um, they would catch the rattlesnakes in, well, it starts back in April when it starts warming up down here. People would go to the dens, catch them. A lot of times they'll gas them out. Now the problem is gassing, one, it's against the law to do, but people still do it. But what that does is that makes that den completely useless to not just rattlesnakes use them, other uh, reptiles use them, other mammals and stuff like that will use that. But once you gas it, nothing lives there.
And you're
It's
talking about like
toxic.
pouring gasoline
Yes,
down these
pouring
holes.
gasoline in there.
Yeah.
And so if anybody sees those videos of they're lifting houses or sheds up and there's a bunch of rattlesnakes under there, 9 out of 10, that's because someone gassed the den close by there and they had to find somewhere else to live, the ones that survived. But going on the rattlesnake hunts, um, Friday and Saturday was the festival. They would have like this big old arena with all these rattlesnakes in there. They would just dump them. They would kick them around. They would do little tricks with them, like the guy would get in a sleeping bag with them. The side of me that kind of wish that the people that would get in it would be bit. That was the kind of the dark side of me because I know what they're doing to these animals. I just kind of, in the back of my mind, I always wish, like, man, I wish you'd get bit so maybe you would stop doing this because I'm not going to say it,
But their
but
mouths aren't
on
all stitched, right? Like they're in the arena.
no, they're in
It's
the arena. They're not stitched. The only one that was stitched was the one that was
like for
I
photos.
photos, yeah. But on Sunday they would in Winoka they would have a trailer that they would bring at the rattlesnakes, measure them. Once they get the measurements, chop their head off, slit their belly open, rip their guts out, take their skin off, throw the body to the side to be um, used, I guess, for meat and all that. But the skin will be used for trinkets and stuff like that, like belts and boots and wallets and stuff like that. Um, I am well, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a part, but I'm a big supporter of this organization on Facebook. They're trying to shut down these rattlesnake roundups, especially on the west, and they have been doing that. Winoka, I got family back up in there, and they're saying that the festival's starting to die out. Not that many people are showing up, so that shows they're at least doing something. Um, but yeah, I try to tell people all this. If you would take that snake and just change it to like a cat or a dog, these would never be going on. The fact that these animals are getting killed like this and it's showing an effect. Yeah, people try to say, well, we need to get rid of them or there's too many of them. No, there's not. There has been proof out there that the rodent population is booming because you took out the predator
Mm.
or by versa. It's affecting the ecosystem some way whenever these rattlesnake hunts are going for so many years and you see hundreds of rattlesnakes in those arenas.
Totally.
So,
Yeah,
so
it's so. Do they basically use the? You said they kind of start collecting them in the spring. So over the year, are they just, or through the summer, are they just collecting them? So by the time the festival comes, there's a bunch to
uh,
use, or do they just do it in like a weekend beforehand or something?
they will start collecting them once our winters are over with, when it starts warming up, and it's as long as it gets in the 50s, and and a lot of the shows are in end of April, beginning of May.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And then
So
so yeah, so it's right now, I guess that's why we're starting to see
yeah, it's
more of this
going on
stuff
right
pop up.
now.
And then you were saying in the east, they've kind of redirected these to more conservation focus. So
Yep.
I assume they're not bringing animals into an arena at all. Is it more just like how is the festival different if they're still running some sort of festival?
I really did not know that
Okay.
until I listened to my buddy Jason Clark at Reach Out Reptiles. Not Reach Out Reptiles, that's Garrett Hurdle. Southeastern Reptile Rescue
Mhm.
at Snakes R Us TV. Jason Clark, that's one of my buddies right there. And I was listening to his podcast because he has one. And that's where he was talking about how they redirect them. And that's where I learned that part. Because I've rarely been over to these. The farthest I went is Mississippi.
Mhm.
Um, but living here in Oklahoma and just right 20 minutes down the road's Texas. Um, I've been all over Texas. I've been all over Oklahoma, and I've been out west quite a few times, but just never really over to the east.
Okay. And so do you think that even those brief experiences as a young child at those type of at the rattlesnake roundup kind of changed or influenced you as a reptile keeper or reptile lover, or were you already just kind of invested in these animals in some way and that was just kind of a sad memory?
I would say the rattlesnake roundups is a sad memory. My mother told me she has a photo. I wish I could find that photo. She said when I was two, we were up where I was born at in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and she said they were at this place, and I walked over there, and I just put my hands on there, and I was just glued to what was on the outside of the glass. She said there was a cobra hooded up,
Mhm.
and she's like, ever since then, we cannot get you to stop. Like, I remember when I think I was 8 years old, I saw a horny toad run across the road. I said, "Mom, lizard, bye." I jumped out of the car. Thank God we were slowing down. I didn't think of it. I jumped out of the car. I grabbed that lizard, and it's a little horny toad.
That's awesome. So it's been something
But
that's been around for in you forever. And then
yeah,
when did you actually start keeping reptiles?
I kept a water mock skin when I was 7 years old in the closet. I
Okay, so
didn't
you're
know it was a water mock
one of those
skin.
wild kids.
Yeah, the crocodile hunter had a big influence in me because when I moved up to my dad's, I realized we don't have water moccasins up there, but
Mhm.
we have a bunch of Nerotias. So that told me, oh, that's a free for all right there. If it's deadly, if it's venomous, it has a rattle on its tail. If it doesn't, it's not venomous. So I was running out there like a 11, 12-year-old me was running out there in these ponds, grabbing these water snakes, and grabbing by the tail and trying to talk in like an Aussie accent like the crocodile hunter.
And no bites.
Oh, I got lit up.
Oh, you did, but you never got
Oh, I got
never got
no,
envenomated. Okay.
no. I was okay. Thank goodness. I know I remember this. I was playing with the black snake that I thought it was a chicken snake, or what everybody tells, but a chicken snake's a rat snake. But you know how they have nicknames for everything.
Yes, yeah.
Um, the snake turned around and tried to bite me. Well, I dropped it. And later on, when you start learning about these animals, that's when you kind of think like, that had a stubby body, a triangle head. Remember the eyes were slit like cat eyes. That was a watermark skin I was keeping in the closet. And then I don't know what age I was, but I remember I was real little, and we have these big old tires out the lake that I live by down here, and I was trying to catch this real pretty brown snake, and I know it was light brown. It had these different patterns on it. I was trying to catch it, and then my grandfather walked up. "What are you trying to do?" And all of a sudden, that snake came out, and I tried to go for it, and he grabbed me quickly, and it was because that was a copperhead.
Perfect.
And
Yeah, so
then,
you didn't have to learn the hard way then.
nah, I didn't learn the hard way. Like, I keep venomous, and to this day, I've not been envenomated, But we do have our protocols here, which basically is if I have to call my wife, she knows what happened and she knows throw the kids in the car, turn the flashes on, and drive as fast as you can 1 mile to get to the hospital.
Yeah. So that's
But
that's close at least. Well, why don't you bring us up to speed with what you're keeping? You mentioned the rattlesnakes. I'd love to know the kind of species as well as everything else, so the listeners kind of have a landscape of what's in your home.
yeah, okay. Every time I talk about my animals, I always forget one or two of them. But behind me are my two red-tailed boas. They're the BCI red-tailed boas. They're smaller species. I believe that's BCI. Um, the female hopefully is pregnant, but the male, they're both surrendered to me from a friend. Most of my animals are surrenders, by the way. Um, but so they're in two enclosures that are linked together by a sky hide with a port in it, and it's the total thing's 8 foot by 4 foot by 2 foot. And then we come over here just right outside the screen. I have a Brazilian blue tarantula, and then I have my India ornamental tarantula in my 20-gallon rack system, which is my grow out cages. I've got me a canebrake timber rattler, a Western Massasauga, Western rat snake, which is actually my daughter's. Then on the other 20 gallons, I've got two pastel Western diamondbacks, a desert iguana, two leopard geckos, a Western rat that's from the Smoky Mountains. And then on the first 4 foot by 2 by 2 is my purple lavender G-stripe reticulated python. She's a super dwarf. And then I got two ball pythons, a Sonoran gopher snake. Then I got me a bearded dragon that was found in someone's backyard. I've got two more cages that I'm getting finished because the timber rattler and the, oh, not the, yeah, the timber rattler and the desert iguana needs to be moved into a bigger setup. So I got two cages there ready for them. And then I've got my wife's common snapper. And then I've got me another leopard gecko. All my leopard geckos are surrenders. Um, and then I've got an IJ carpet python, a tokay gecko, and then the most recent one I got yesterday was a 2 foot Savannah monitor.
Mm. So it's a decent size group of animals for sure.
Yeah, and the surrender ones are going to be one ball python. I said all three leopard geckos. The dragon, like I said, I got a call. They thought they had a horny toad in their backyard in the middle of town. Turned to be the dragon, and then these two red-tailed boas.
So those are all surrenders. Are those ones that you're going to keep, or those that you'll eventually? Oh yeah, you're going to keep them. Okay.
Yeah, if they're in this room, I'm keeping them. The monitor, I'm probably going to end up keeping. I love monitors, Savannah monitors. I've always wanted, but it was just kind of. There's certain animals I won't buy because I know I'm going to get one, and I'm just like, if I can take that one that somebody's just surrendering or they abandon it, then give it the life it needs.
And you are, we'll get into this later, but doing an outreach program, an educational program with those animals, I think is in the plan. So we'll talk about that kind of near the end. But there are two main reasons why I really think that you have some good information to share for people. One is the amount of DIY work that you do. So we're going to talk about that next. The enclosures that you build, and especially that 20-gallon rack system, which is something that you showed me when we were on a call a couple months ago, and I was just fascinated by it because I think it's amazing. So we'll give people a kind of a description of what that is. And then the second thing I think you have is a really good relationship with the officials in your neighborhood, in your area, which is something that typically we're always battling the officials, and people hate the wildlife officers or whatever it is, and you have this close relationship that you've actually fostered, and it was something that you've developed. So I want to pick your brain about that as well. But let's start with the DIY projects, because I think this is an area where people, especially now, the economy is getting worse and worse and worse. People are going to want to do things on their own for hopefully cheaper. If you're in Canada like me, you know that the hardware stores is maybe not the cheapest place, but in the States, building supplies are still reasonably cheap, and you can build things on your own. Now, not necessarily if you don't have the skill set. Hopefully, we can give you some ideas for how to find someone with the skill set and give them plans or something. But let's just start with your enclosures themselves. Can you walk us through how you build them, the materials you use, and then maybe we'll break down kind of your rough cost and go from there.
Yeah. basically, I'm building my smallest enclosures I want to build are 4 foot by 2 by 2s, and they're completely made out of wood. I dry lock the inside and I paint the outside latex paint, and then the trim. You can see a little bit of the trim behind me. I stained this one red after burning it. I actually decided to change that because the deal with my mind's constantly changing on these things. But so if okay, on the 4 foot by 2 by 2s, the sheet of wood, it literally takes just one sheet, a 4 by 8 sheet. And I don't have a truck to pull that, to bring that home with. So I'll have them cut it while I'm there at the store. And it's everything's really reasonable to build these things. And it's not rocket science. We're just building a box.
And
But there
how
are,
thick is that? Is that 3/4 thick or what is that?
yeah, 3/4 thick.
Okay.
And there's just little tricks that you can figure out. And a lot of the ideas that what I get my inspiration from is the DIY projects that people build for their houses. And
Mm.
then also I look at the PVC enclosure builders. I see how they're doing it. That I try in my mind, I can just like look at something on screen, and then that gets the gears turning, and then I just try it. If I build something, I burn enclosures because I was like, wrong, just throw them in the fire pit.
Mm.
Just rip what I can reuse, what I can scavenge, and then burn the rest, start over. I don't have a problem doing that. I want to make sure these things are perfect. So, yeah, you get your panels all cut. Um, Make sure you have your tape measure. Make sure you have a wooden pencil that you can draw on the wood with. If you have a skill saw, a bandsaw, a jigsaw, that all helps you. If you have a router, that's even better. I've tried a router. I still need to play around that with that tool. um, and you can kind of, if you look at some of these enclosures like this one, the ventilation I went kind of, it looks like a tornado kind of track. um, because like I said, I still got to play around with the routers, but again, like there's little tricks with building these enclosures. Like I like using screws to hold it together, of course, but I like laying a bead of wood glue down at the seams, and then I'll run to help the plywood from not splitting. You'll take a drill bit and drill a hole through there, and then you'll dip your screw into wood glue and then run that down.
Mm.
You can get a box built. I can get one built within in 30 minutes.
So
Super
basically,
fast.
for people that are maybe not listening and don't see what's behind it, there's essentially no frame, right? You're just taking the plywood and you're
Yep.
just butting it up to make a corner, and then throwing a screw into one of the sides to weld them together, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. And to make sure it's level, I do have a leveler, but a lot of times I just use my hands to kind of go at both seams and just make sure, because I'm going to come back over it with a
Mm.
sanding disc to make sure it's all smooth. But once you get your box built, you'll build your frame, or your trim, which the trim is just stud boards, like the studs you use for your house. Like these pieces are $3 for every 8 feet. So you bring that, you cut it up. Typically on a 4 foot by 2 by 2, it's going to take two uh, studs to build your frame or your trim. And then on the trim, like right here, this piece, I'll take my table saw and I'll run the blade up, but I won't cut all the way through it. And I'll make multiple passes down to act like a groove for the glass to go in. So that glass is
Gotcha.
going in about another inch into that wood. And I just thought that'd be an awesome way for the snake not to possibly open the
For
lid.
sure. It just tucks the glass
Yeah,
basically inside a piece of trim wood. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And then from there, once I get all the wood done, then I'll take dry lock, which is just your masonry dry lock, and you can change the color with latex paint. You can use cement color or whatever you want to do to get any kind of color you want. I typically like to go with the real dark look, so I'll use black paint to mix in with it because it's a white dry lock, so it tints really easy. And then you just get a roller and you just go to town on the inside. Everything on the inside of that cage is dry locked. Um,
Do you do more than one coat?
yes, I'll do at least 2 coats on it.
Okay.
So that I've actually learned from throwing a tank outside that they hold water. It rained and this thing held water, and I was like, we're going to see how long it goes. And that lasted all the way up until mosquitoes started getting in it in the summer, and that was like a couple months.
If you actually want to see the natural, beautiful colors of your plants and animals in your vivarium, then they need to be lit up by a high-quality lamp. And that is where Med's ReptiSun LED hood with sunrise and sunset timer comes in. This lamp has an extremely high, best-in-class color rendering index of 94, which means the natural, vibrant colors of both your plants and animals are going to pop in the Viv, especially those that have red color, whether that's plants or animals. They are going to look incredible under these high-quality LED chips. And of course, the new exciting feature of being able to program a sunrise and a sunset, meaning you can actually gradually increase and decrease the brightness of the light by 10% increments to simulate that slow rise in the morning and slow set in the evening. It is IP65 rated, which means it's perfect for humid environments. And if you're somebody that likes to be efficient with their space, then you'll definitely want to check out the ReptiSun LED UVB combo hood. That includes both the LED strip for visible light as well as programming the 90-minute sunrise or sunset, and a T5 for your UV production that runs on a on-off timer. The hood has aluminum housing for efficient heat transfer and longer life. It has independent timers for both the T5 and the LEDs, and a T5 UVB lamp is also included with the hood. For more information on this or any other Med product, make sure you head to zoomed.com or check out the link in the show notes or the YouTube description. So you basically had it on its back, essentially, so it was a trough. And it rained into it, and it filled up and held water.
Yeah, so I was like, wow, you can actually use this for an aquarium.
That's crazy. Wow.
But you one thing too, I of course you're going to put ventilation in these things. So I would take a 2-inch hole cutting saw and I'll just put vent hose all over. And on Amazon, you can get these little metal ventilation ports. And I literally take liquid nail and just put liquid nail on the inside of here and just tape it on there. And a 2-inch hole, that thing's going to set flush on there, and that can add as your ventilation. Or you can take your jigsaw and cut you a square in there and then take metal aluminum screening and just staple it on there.
Sure. Yeah.
Do that. And then if you're going to run lights on the inside like I do, um, you'll get these little dudes off Amazon too. These are these little electrical pass-throughs that you get on the tanks nowadays. But the deal is with a 3/4 inch piece of wood, you're not going to get the ring on there. So again, with the liquid nail, you just go around the threads and just push that in there, and that's never coming loose.
So that would be like, yeah, you probably just, it's probably called like a cord pass-through or something like that.
Yeah, it's a cord
Amazon.
pass-through.
Yeah,
it's
okay.
You just twist it and they come apart, and you have these little grooves that you can put wires through.
Yeah.
So gives it a lot cleaner look to it. So,
and then just getting back to that 4x8 sheet of plywood for folks that wanted to build a 4x2, obviously that's probably the most common size. It's a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and then you must cut it in half, like hamburger style, like the short way, and then you cut
the short
each
way
piece in half.
Yeah, you'll cut it down every 2 feet, so therefore you'll have your 4 feet, but then 2 feet, and then one of your 4-footers, you'll just cut that in half, so it's 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot.
Yeah. Okay. So so you have basically, you end up with 3 4x2 sheets as well as 2 2x2s, and that's your ends, and then you have your side, back, and bottom.
Yep, and then your trim goes on the inside there that kind of makes it flush, and from there you can basically do your trim any color you want. On Amazon, there's a really neat water-based dye, a stainer that's a powder. You mix with water, and you can see it's some of my newer ones that I'm sanding this one down to do it, but my newer ones are painted purple.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so that's just, you've used that powder inside. You mix it with paint,
just
or you
water.
mix it with water? You just mix it with water. Okay.
Yeah, so it's water-based. It's safe, and then from that, you just go get your little plastic glass tracks. You can get those off Amazon also. A lot of stuff comes from Amazon. And these glass tracks are what I'm going to use the glass to slide back and forth to make the doors. Mm-hmm. And the glass just comes from a local glass company that I just called up and said, hey, I just need something by measurement such and such.
And how thick is the glass you're using? Do you know?
It's a quarter-inch thick acrylic.
Okay. Oh, it's acrylic. Okay, so you're not
Yeah,
using glass. You're just using acrylic. Okay,
yeah,
that's probably a little
it's
cheaper, I guess.
yeah, it's a little cheaper, but it's actual glass.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I have like some that are tempered, like a tempered glass, so it's like a thick, like legit
Right.
glass, and then I have acrylic as well. The acrylic is lighter, and also you're not worried about it shattering. Where
Yeah,
the
if
tempered
you
glass, like I always worry, like if I'm taking it out and I bump it against something, it's just going to explode on me. It's not going to be
yeah,
dangerous and create shards. It's just going to be a mess, and then I'm not going to have a door, you know.
yeah, definitely. That's why I like using the acrylic stuff, is because I've chipped them and they're just fine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So,
And
um, this literally costs like, of course, these 4 foot by 4x2s, which end up being 8 foot, are a little bit more, but a typical 4 foot by 2x2 just cost me anywhere from 120 to 150.
so between 120 and 150 US dollars,
Yep.
obviously not including your time, but for,
No,
for most people,
but
they enjoy, if you have the weekend, you want to do something fun and it's a fun project, it's not going to take you a super long time, especially once you kind of get the pattern down. You could probably whip these together pretty quickly.
oh yeah, I've already built one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, and I'm working on the eighth one out there.
Yeah.
And my eighth one is a 6 foot by 4 foot by two, and that's for my super dwarf retic.
And you use basically the same
Same
pattern,
technique.
same
You
technique.
just do
Okay.
different sizes, and if you need more material, I mean, yeah, the price is going to go up. The glass price is going to go up. Like for the Retix cage, they're going to have to order the glass in because it's bigger. That's going to cost me $180
Gotcha.
for that. For a 4 foot by 2 by 2, the two panels cost about $24.
Yeah, so super cheap. And then
Yeah.
just as I'm looking over your shoulder, just another two things that I know when I did my enclosures. One is the cabinet lock. So that's another thing you can
Yep.
easily get off Amazon. And then I don't know if you have, but something that I've included on mine are finger pulls. They're like, they just, they stick on the glass. It's just something for you to grip your finger on to slide them open. That's
I
something that also
do
is
need
nice.
that.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
nice too. So if anyone's trying to figure out, I remember for years ago, I was like, what do you call those? But they're just called finger pulls. Like if you search
Yep.
finger pulls, they'll come up.
You can also use duct tape and just open
And
it
make
that
a little
way.
handle. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's different. Yeah, if you want to be super cost effective, you could do that as well. And and also if somebody didn't know, if somebody had no tools and they were like, I don't even want to do this, they could still go to the hardware store, buy their 4x8 sheet of plywood, get Home Depot or Lowe's or whoever, cut it into their squares, and then
Yep.
bring it to basically any carpenter, anybody who has even basic handy skills, and they should be able to slap that together for
Oh
them pretty
yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, definitely. You can just go online and just look up a reptile enclosure and say, hey, here's the pieces. I just want something like this built. And you can you can get it. If anybody knows how to make a cabinet or something like that, or just good with their hands on wood skills, I mean, they could do this stuff. This is super easy.
Yeah. And now
Uh,
I think you said the ones behind you are stacked. Like, are you pretty confident stacking them
Climbed in. I'm 230 pounds and I climbed in the top of it.
and no shifting or any risk
Nope.
there?
It did not even make a sound. I
Yeah.
mean, it rolls around because everything's on casters, so I can roll everything around. It wiggled because of the casters, but other than that, it held my weight, so I have no issues at all with these enclosures. And what's nice about it is my local game warden will even tell me like he's approving them for venomous too.
Oh, perfect. Well, and the thing is, 3/4 inch plywood is exceptionally strong. It's a very
Yeah,
strong piece of lumber, so you can really do a lot with that.
yeah, definitely. And it just kind of once you build your box, it just the imagination goes from there.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of different things. If you want to, if you have a CNC table, you could put in a image and it could cut you a image out in the wood that you could pour epoxy in there
Mhm.
and do like a logo or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there is some benefits to wood enclosures. I mean, they heat well.
Oh
They
yeah.
You don't really have to worry about them disintegrating. I mean, people are always worried, but like you said, you put the dry lock in and you're fine. But even untreated wood will last outside for years, and we're not subjecting it to that much inside a reptiles enclosure. So it does really, they do a lot. They're very rugged.
Yeah, definitely. Like my Retix enclosure is setting at like 70% humidity, and then my ball pythons, I had an issue with that one. It went up to 90% humidity really easy. You paddle humidity a lot more than you do anything else in these enclosures if you add just a little bit of water to them.
Mm.
So for my Sonoran Gopher, I put a little tiny water bow in there. That's it.
Yeah.
If I put anything else like coconut bedding or anything and just get that little moist, the humidity stays in there. I have to run fans in here because the humidity will build up in these enclosures too much. And I'm not running into issues with the mold or anything or wood rot or nothing. Um, Everything's just fine. It's just I'm constantly checking my animals and making sure that they don't have no belly rot or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's just on the back of my mind. Like once you get these enclosures, it's dialing these things in. And once you kind of get your 4 foot by 2 by 2s, that's kind of easy to dial in. It's these bigger ones that take a little bit more finessing to get dialed in.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, you had mentioned this earlier too. If somebody wanted to keep a more arid species, they could cut out a large hole to the top and add a screen. And I did my Japanese rat snake video that I did in the summertime. So I guess if anyone's listening to this, the summer of 2024, I did a kind of a tutorial about how to build a screen. Like I basically used a wooden frame and then put an aluminum screen in there. So if anybody's kind of curious how they could do that, they could do that. And then that would obviously give you a lot more ventilation and deal with the humidity. And maybe that would be more effective than fans. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. Um, a staple gun's going to be your best friend when you have dealing with any kind of screening you want
Oh
to
yeah,
heat
that
put
simplifies it.
on. And then what I really like doing, so in case you get something like a retic, they might try to push up and maybe pull up the screw or the staples. I'll cut the wood strips up and then Gorilla Glue them and then I'll run screws down to kind of build like a frame around the screening to
Yeah.
lock it down even more.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. And the other project, so I think that's really practical for almost anybody who wants to get into reptile keeping, especially if you live in a place where things are relatively cheap and you can build those things all day without having any problems. I love the other thing I mentioned was the 20-gallon rack. So for those that are, and so maybe we'll throw some pictures and some video clips for those who are watching on YouTube or Spotify, but especially for those who are just listening, can you visually describe what that looks like? Because there's some really ingenious things about that rack that I think are clever that I want to share with people.
Yeah, the 20-gallon rack actually came from the idea of how people keep ball pythons in racks and also watching a lot of home DIY builders. Like that's like I said, I watch it a lot and I get that into my enclosures. So the rack system is a mixture of 1 by 1 boards and then 2 by 4 boards, just building a long, I guess you can call it a skeleton. And I need to go ahead and frame it all in. And actually, I'm thinking about scrapping it and redoing something completely because I found out how I can do the joints a lot better on it. But I have the skeleton built, and then I'll have boards on there that the tank just sets on. And then on the boards will slide in and out on soft close ball bearing rollers. So they'll fully extend out. But the idea of that was I want a soft closing roller kit on there because I don't want to have to mangle or jingle that tank back and spilling all the water everywhere.
Mhm.
That's just where that idea came from. So did that, but then the I found out while doing all that with every board's kind of stacked because I have it where it's 320 gallons all stacked up on top of each other. There's enough spacing in there where I can run lights in there. So I'll have hangers tape just kind of screwed through the tops of it, just kind of going over, and then I'll have lights just sitting on top of there. Um, then I'll put a backing board on there, and I found out that holds heat really good. So there's lights on every enclosure. If you need to access enclosure, you just pull it out, and then once you're done, you push it back in, and it just simplifies things. And it has where you can stack 20 gallons in a really tight spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was super clever. So for those who are just trying to picture it, it's basically like a large rack system. Like just picture a ball python rack, but instead of tubs, it's a 20-gallon aquarium with, little snakes inside. But they have, there's like Chris was saying, they're sitting on, it's almost like the drawers in your kitchen. And for those that don't know what the soft close is, I'm sure most people do, but it's like if you went to slam your cutlery drawer, it's going to close, and in the last 2 or 3 inches, it's going to almost catch itself and slowly close to a soft close, and you won't even hear it close. And so basically you can pull out the 20-gallon on a roller, and the lighting and all that stuff stays inside the shelf, so you're not yanking out a bunch of cords. So it's just a really clean thing. The aquarium moves out totally on its own. You can do your maintenance, and then you can slide it back in, and it joins the rest of the wall.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to have it to where you don't see the plastic on the cages at all. So I want to put the sides on, I want to put a front on, then I want to put a top on, kind of encase it all. But I actually thought of a deal to where I could route the wood and then pour epoxy in there and put LEDs behind it and have the epoxy glowing, kind of like lightning strikes over it or something.
That would be cool. So you mean the plastic is in like the black plastic that comes out of
the plaid plastic that goes around the tanks. Like, because the idea is when you go to a zoo or something, and you see like the tarantulas and all that, you just see the glass. You don't see everything around it. It has like this really neat rock formation or something, kind of encasing everything. That's kind of the idea that I have.
So then, to go along with that, if you were to pull out the enclosure, the trim would come out with it.
No, you would actually take the trim off with magnets.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And then you would be able to access your tanks from there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's and so the whole thing is made out of wood. There's no. I thought there was welding in that project, or was that a different project? There's no welding there.
No, the welding that's for my car channel when I worked on hot rods.
Okay, that's a totally different thing. So if anybody's interested in hot rods, they can go check it. Maybe we'll get you to plug that as well, because I'm sure there are some people that want to know about that. But okay, so that's relatively, that's a little bit more complicated than building the 4x2x2s. But if someone is a slightly more, maybe we'll say beginner or carpenter, they could probably put together that frame, and all they're doing is buying like the soft roll rails.
Yeah.
What was the name? What were they called again?
They're soft close ball bearing drawer kits.
Okay.
You can get a pack of 5 off Amazon for $20.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and that's all you need.
Yeah, just need that, and you have your board that the tank sets on, and then that you have your little 2x4 boards on the sides, and that gives you something that the rollers can actually anchor onto, and then it just slides back and forth.
The best part about providing high-quality reptile husbandry is you get to develop a long-term relationship with your animal. Meet Jackson, my 18-year-old crested gecko. Jackson lives on the BioDudes Terrafauna substrate, which is one of their substrates that's specifically designed for warm biomes and humidity spikes. Like all other BioDudes substrates, it contains organic content to help support the plant life in Jackson's vivarium. It also holds moisture very well, which means humidity is never an issue, even in my dry climate. Another favorite of mine is the BioDudes Bug Grub. This is a supplement powder made from natural ingredients like carrots, beets, spirulina, oats, and potatoes. Everybody knows how important gut-loading feeder insects is, and this simplifies it for me and allows me to be confident when I feed both Jackson and my tarantulas that they're getting the nutrients they need to thrive. Also, if you have a lot of babies right now, this is a great way to help fortify the diets of neonatal reptiles. The BioDude has a ton of great educational content on both his YouTube channel and the website, all about bioactive care, and it's just one of those brands that's doing their part to push herpetoculture into a positive direction and give reptile keeping a better name. Now, is there any weight limit that you would worry about with that sort of thing? Because you're probably... Yeah, okay. So how would you say 20-gallon aquarium is about as big as you would want to go? You're not putting water in it.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to trust with water. I might
No.
put, there's a weight. I forgot how many pounds it is, because I've had them for so long. But I'm not exceeding that weight at all.
So whatever the weighting standard is on the actual package, you've just gone off that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I love that idea. I mean, for those listening, when I was talking to Chris back in I think January, he was just walking me around his room, and I just thought it was so cool because you're able to pull them out, and you see this like little tiny rattlesnake in this 20-gallon enclosure, and then you can push it back in the wall and go to the next one. And yeah, it's just a really unique way of 'cause one of the questions that always comes up ever since I've run the podcast is like, how can we make a rack system that also allows us to use proper lighting? And I think that's a really good solution for it.
Yeah, and anybody that's listening, I don't have a problem with PVC. I don't have a problem using glass or anything like that. My deal is where I live at, I can't see to be paying $300-400 for an enclosure when I can just build it a lot cheaper. Yeah, I don't have a problem with any of the other cages that people use or anything like that. I think they're really cool. And all the companies out there that build PVC enclosures, they're absolutely awesome. Even the metal aluminum ones at Heartland uh, uh, enclosures are building, they're everything's extremely awesome, well built and everything. It's just I like working with my hands, basically.
Yeah.
I tinker around with everything. I have ADHD. I can't sit still. I have a very diverse collection, and it's probably because of my ADHD. And things are constantly changing, and because new ideas pop in my head. I mean, if you talk to my wife, she can pull her hair out because how many times I talk about my animals.
Yeah, I bet. That's going to be a familiar story for many people listening. So, anyway, I think this is hopefully that's two like really interesting options for people to kind of consider into the DIY space, and it's sometimes it can be intimidating for people. So I think those are some interesting ideas. I love to jump onto you'd already mentioned the Fish and Wildlife, or maybe that wasn't the title you gave him, but you. Tell me about the relationship you have with we'll call them wildlife officials. You can tell us the real title in a second that you have in your area, and maybe how it started, and then we'll I want to break that down a little bit.
Yeah, where it all started was I wanted to keep venomous snakes, and in Oklahoma, our license are everybody says Texas is the most relaxed when it comes to keep venomous. I think Oklahoma is more relaxed than Texas. Really, the only thing they require is a escape proof enclosure, and the viewing glass has to be thicker than a 1/4 inch thick, and you need double screen ventilation, and you need a mechanical lock on the enclosure. So I built a 20-gallon like that for my rattlesnakes that are little. You had to have an enclosure set up like that. Then the game warden has to come and inspect your enclosure. And just from doing that, I became friends with the my game warden. And it just started from there. He looked at my other animals and he said, "Well, it's clear to show that you know what you're doing on keeping these animals." And he signed off my paperwork. And every time you get a Oklahoma native animal that we can't go outside and pick up a copperhead, but we can buy a copperhead. But if we're going to keep a venomous snake that is found in the Oklahoma borders, we got to have a paper trail. So to
Okay.
show proof we didn't go outside and pick it up.
Can you keep
So
any venomous snake in Oklahoma as long as you follow those rules, or is it only the native species that you're allowed to keep?
the only ones that I could see there'd be any problems with if it's a CITES regulated thing, you have to have any
Okay.
special paperwork because it's rare and endangered.
But if it's
Other
not
than
CITES,
that,
let's say it's like a black mamba, or I don't even know if
yeah,
mambas are CITES or whatever. But if they aren't, as long as you follow those rules that you set out with the enclosure, you're okay to build. But if you do keep native species, you need to have a paper trail.
yes.
Okay.
And so far, everything I've got, like the Western Masaga, the Cane Brake, and the Western Diamondbacks, you can find in Oklahoma. So I do have a paper trail where they came from. So, um, and then you just have to report, hey, I bought this, and here's the enclosures going in. My game warden just said, hey, just send pictures. That's fine. So
Yeah.
you start sending pictures, and then the following year, because you have to pay for your license every year, it's only $10 if you're just going to keep them. If you're going to breed them and sell them, it's $50. I don't want to breed venomous snakes. I just want to keep them. So um, $10 once a year. Your game warden comes by and just signs off. He looks at your paperwork to see if you got anything new. If you didn't, all right, everything's cool. And I just started calling him and just checking in, just trying to make a friend, and ended up doing that. He would sit there and talk to me and ask me like a little bit about me, and I told him how much I'm into these animals and how much I'm an average hunter. I go deer hunting a lot. I go pig hunting a lot. I do bow fishing, normal fishing, and all that. I've donated to the Oklahoma Wildlife Department, so my names came up a lot in there for the license. So he's known about me, but he wanted to get to know me more about these animals. And I told him, like, yeah, people have found out that I am a snake guy, and they said, everybody knows you're a snake guy. They're like, hey, I got the snake in my yard. Come get it. So I told him, man, I've been doing that, and it kind of started from there. So we can fast forward to now. If my game warden's told me, like, he told me what license I need and all that, so I can go and rescue the native wildlife, like copperheads, rattlesnakes, and rat snakes out of people's yard, relocate them somewhere else. He's helping me get the license. He's also helping me. It's like, hey, if we get a call or anything, I'll redirect them to you. If we had to seize anybody's collection, I'll come to you, see if you can take it first. Like, he called me up last year if I wanted a Quadamone. You know what that is? A South American
Like,
raccoon?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, there's like 12 of them by the lake, and he called me. You want one? I have nowhere to put one of those things, dude.
That's amazing. But what I think is just unique about that story is that quite often when the private sector has to deal with a government official, let's say it's a game warden or fish and wildlife, and again, it probably is very dependent on the actual official as well. But
It does.
we do sort of see it as like, oh, it's like we approach it from like a contentious position, like I just want to get through this, let's just get through this a check or get through the phone call or get the signature so I can just disappear back into what I'm doing. But it's almost like you approached it in a way where like every time you needed to connect with them, it was like an opportunity to connect with him and to connect with him as a friend, rather than being like an adversary where you're just trying, almost where he's against you and you're against him, to the point now where he trusts you, and he's actually calling you to say like, hey, we got some exotic animals on the loose and we'd rather not put them down, like maybe you could have this one. Or and it becomes a helpful relationship where, as far as he's concerned, you are a reasonable and responsible reptile keeper, both venomous and non-venomous, and that might be how he thinks of reptile keepers moving forward, because he thinks of you first rather than thinks of a guy who's trying to be shady and isn't being totally honest up front, and you're following the rules.
Well, I've even went to him and told him, was like, because in Oklahoma, we can't keep alligators because back when they were on the endangered species list, they labeled them to where you can't keep them. Well, no one's went to that. But I went to him and I told him, man, I wonder if we can get that changed to where maybe we can be licensed to keep an alligator. And heck, even if we could do that, we don't need a license to keep crocodiles. You can just go
Right.
buy one, keep it. You could just
Any
go buy
species.
any exotic species like that. And I told him straight out, it's like, I wouldn't want little 11-year-old Johnny keeping a saltwater crocodile or an inland taipan in his place. I've heard people keeping rattlesnakes with books stacked on top of their cage on the kitchen counter. And I'm
Perfect.
like, we don't need that. That's how things turn bad. So if there's a way we could actually be permitted so y'all guys can come in and inspect, and if you see something wrong, have them correct it, I'm all up for that. I went to him to ask him if we could do things. Maybe we could be allowed to do things because I want to keep crocodiles, and but I feel like I'm safe enough to keep crocs, but not necessarily somebody down the road. I'm pretty sure we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I said, and in the end of the day, most of your wildlife department people, join the wildlife department to save animals, to push for the treating animals with respect and getting the people that are poaching or doing just straight out the wrong stuff like I can't think of what people would do out there besides poaching and just killing just to kill an animal or anything like that. Like, yeah, they're going to get on to you if you do something wrong. You just, like I said, if you're not educated about this stuff, just call and ask them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing a show here later on this month, and I wanted to take my rattlesnakes with me. Well, I called my game warden, and he's like, I really don't know about that. Here, let me talk to my sergeant. And his sergeant called me, and he said, yeah, looking at your license, no, you cannot leave that facility with them with this license. I was like, great. I wanted to make sure I knew that before I actually
Yeah.
did that. He's like, no, no, no. Yeah, yeah, they're definitely understand. And we want y'all to call in. And if y'all don't know, call. We'll get y'all the answer. At
Yes.
least here in Oklahoma, they'll work with you, and that's all I want to do. I want to show them that, hey, I'm not the crazy Joe Exotic son of a gun that is known here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that guy's down the road too.
Yeah, that
Or
dude
was.
just, yeah, they moved those tigers an hour away from where I live right now. And there's a rumor there's a tiger running around where I go herping at.
It's wild. But I think you make a really good point is that, and this is so valuable, the people that go into those positions, and again, I know it's variable to the type of, maybe the actual person that you're dealing with is a legitimate asshole and doesn't want to work with you. That's totally
Right.
fine. But most of the, or I should say all of them, go into that profession because they are wildlife lovers or animal lovers in general, and they're also, most of them are hunters or respect hunting and fishing because that's what their half of what their job is, or a large part of their job in some cases, which means that they are already opposed to the animal rights groups like the PETAs and the people that are totally against hunting, eating animals, and keeping pets. So when PETA comes to them with, hey, we should ban reptiles, the game warden type people are probably already thinking, hey, it's PETA, I don't even have respect for you anyway. But in many cases, they're listening to PETA because they don't have a good relationship with the reptile keepers. Where if it was in your area, your county, if an animal rights group went to your game warden to petition against reptile keeping, the first person they'd probably phone is you to discuss this and to say, like, this is what's happening. Like, is there something that we need to change here? Rather than listening to the animal rights groups, which they're probably not even really on the same page philosophically for most things.
Right. Yeah. Like, there's anything, because I'll tell you the truth. Like, back when we had what was that bill that I was going to go through a couple years ago here in the U.S. Um, for anybody in the U.S., you know what I'm talking about. U.S. ARC was going all it's about to ban every exotic animal that we had.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot think of what it was called, but I'm always worried about that because I work with those animals that people go after all the
Was
time.
it the Jane Goodall thing, or
No, it wasn't the Jane Goodall thing. I just
I
can't
forget?
think.
I do remember what you're talking about. Yeah, I just can't
Yeah, it
remember
was
the
just a
name.
couple years ago, right after
Yeah,
COVID,
yeah.
and even with this documentary that's coming out, I do sit there and I do worry. Am I going to be able to buy my new rattlesnake I want? I want to work with other vipers. I want a cobra later on. I want crocodilians. Um, and if they ban all that, then what am I going to do? I love retics. I like big animals. I want to work with these. And if they go through and ban that stuff, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know. This has been my whole life. I literally can't think of a day going without working with these animals.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not over here abusing these animals. I'm not trying to shove them in tiny cages. They're not going without water. They're not going out food or anything like that. Their husbandry and everything is spot on. The where I save money on building these cages is where I can afford putting in. the lighting, the Arcadia lights, the UVB if they need it, the UVA. I run ambient heat, so the desert ones they get more intense heat. Um, I can do that. I can put more money on vet visits and stuff like that if I need to. Um, I save money on my food because I raise my own rats and chickens. So where I save money at, I put more money into other things
Hmm.
that are more important to keep these animals. So again, if you can make a relationship with your local law enforcement and all that, game wardens, local PD, get out there to everybody and just kind of be that face for these animals and all that and showcase that we're not crazy. Though, so therefore, when something comes down the pipeline, then maybe that person that's walking up there to cast their vote saying, should we ban this or should we not? It's like, well, I remember that one dude that had the snake and all that, but he wasn't crazy. And I guess seen so and so on the news.
Hmm.
So maybe we can start knocking these down even more.
Totally. Yeah.
So, and even with my local police department, I saw two officers just kind of setting up in a parking lot, and I was making a run to go get ice cream, and I literally pulled in there and I said, "Hey guys, I'm Chris with the Reptiles and Oddities," and they sat there, and an officer will talk to you no matter what. They're always going to, and I literally told them about what I do and what I'm wanting to do, and they said, "Great, we need someone like you because most of us are scared of snakes."
Yeah.
So now when someone calls in and says they got a snake in their house, they said, "Well, call Reptiles and Oddities. Here's his number." So the police department's referring everything over to me. Then I went to animal control. So therefore, when they get anything exotic or any donations, it comes over here too.
Right.
So I got a
Exactly.
relation. Yeah, I got a relationship with all the law enforcement through here. I just don't do sheriff because I'm like, man, I don't want to get a call 20 miles away.
Yes. No, but I think that's really good, especially if you live in a area where snakes end up in backyards or venomous snakes end up in basements and garages and whatnot. I'm sure the police get called for that sort of thing all the time,
Yeah,
and
they
it's not
do.
really a police thing. And like you said, and most police officers aren't going to have the knowledge or the skill to be able to handle a venomous snake anyway. And especially if they're scared, then it's a whole other story. So to have somebody on speed dial to say, "Hey, Chris, we got Oak Street 26 Oak Street's got a rattlesnake or something in the garage. Can you go fetch it?" That there you go. You got your what is that, a
I got a
radio?
scanner so I can hear him say, "We're going to dispatch reptiles and oddities, so I'm going to get my stuff ready."
That's awesome. So so if anybody lives in an area, if you're somebody that does relocations, then I think that's a really cool way to connect with the law enforcement and to start to make relationships with people, because if they don't have physical personal relationships with the reptile hobby, they just immediately will believe whatever the animal rights group says we like tells them about us. But
Right,
instead they could tell a bunch of different things about the reptile hobby, but they're not going to necessarily believe it because they know you personally.
right, definitely. And a lot of these just take a casual conversation. Like, if you don't have a felony or a record, I mean, I have a small record of drifting and street racing. And they
Hence
know that.
the other channel, the other YouTube
Yeah, that's
channel.
the other channel. And but they know that. I haven't done that in a long time. I've kind of left that being on the street since I left OKC where the 405 is. If everybody knows Street Outlaws, I've known some of those guys, really awesome guys. But I just officer is just a normal person, just like you
Yeah.
or I. Um, yeah, you might get some of those. I think they're hot stuff and all that stuff because they got that badge. But honestly, when you tear all that down, they're just a human, and you can talk to them just like you can talk to you or me and
Yeah.
all. So, in which police officers are there because we're paying for them to be there.
Exactly.
So they have to listen to us. And uh, if you're going to do any kind of native relocating in your state, call your game warden and make sure that there's not a law to do that. Because I went a year without knowing it, My even my game warden didn't know that because he doesn't know about these reptiles. But but I had to call up to the main office in our city, Oklahoma City, and talk to them. And that's when they said, yeah, it's called a rehabilitation license here in Oklahoma. And from there, I can do these calls and go get the animal. And I don't charge nothing to go get an animal. Saving that animal's life so I don't hear about how it got its head cut off is my payment. I do say, hey, this is a nonprofit organization, so if you want to donate, every money goes back into these animals.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's a cool model. So when you do a relocation, like, it's typical thing, you show up, it's in somebody's house or in their backyard, you collect them, bag the snake, and then what do you do? Where do you go? Like, do you try to keep it within the vicinity, or do you, in some cases, if you're in the middle of a residential area, do you have to drive quite far?
That is the deal that my game warden and I are trying to figure out because again, with Jason Clark at Snakes R Us TV, he has a whole segment on how to relocate these animals. And if you take an adult to a complete different range, you basically just sent that animal to death
Right.
because an adult animal does not know where the food, water, hide, anything is, and it's wandering around. It can starve to death, it could dehydrate, or it could be picked off by another predator and it just be wandering around. A baby can adapt a lot easier. So you can relocate a baby snake, say 12 miles away, right, but don't do that with an adult. It's really, in every species different. I think like with a rattlesnake, if I'm correct, I think the females have up to a 12-mile range while the males have a 1 mile range.
Oh, wow.
So um, it's different. Again, it's shout out to Jason Clark. He's one of my buddies. I call him up and just talk to him and all that. He's educated me a lot on how to relocate these animals. Um, he he's one that um, you can go to his channel and or reach out to him and just ask him about a certain species that's native and all that, and he can probably help you from there.
So if you capture a male to relocate, do you sex them, or like can you visually tell? I mean, obviously, if it's a large female, maybe it's easier to tell. But
Rattlesnakes, it's easy.
oh, it's easy.
Um,
Okay.
if it's a long it's of a long narrow bands on the tail, like on a Western Diamondback, the black and white, which I call them coontails. If that's a long, narrow uh, coloring right there, that's a male. If it's short and tapered, it's a female.
Okay.
The same thing with timber rattlesnakes.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's just say you get a male and you're trying to work within this mile radius. What do you do? Because he could. I mean, a mile could be just someone else's yard.
I know that's kind of well. The good thing is if it's a rattlesnake, rattlesnakes don't typically like being in neighborhoods,
Okay.
so it's pretty easy to locate them. Copperheads, that's where it gets interesting.
Because you kind of got to put them in in the park next to the house that you found them in, basically.
Luckily, the ones that I have found, the woods weren't too far away.
Okay. Yeah. But you're right. That is a challenge. So that's something good for people to pay attention to as well. As far as you can't just drive 20 miles into the middle of nowhere and let them go, because even though it seems like that's the right thing to do, really it's basically signing their death warrant,
Yeah.
like you said. So why don't we wrap up with just your future plans? I think you had I think we're kind of meandering our way there anyway. You'd mentioned building an education business, and you have this relationship with the game warden and whatnot. So I'd love to hear, moving forward, where do you see yourself in, let's say, somewhere between 3 and 5 years as far as your reptile business is concerned?
Okay. Um, there's a few things I want to change, do in the future, and I'm building that. I'm building all these enclosures because I'm going to build a zoo. When we move, hopefully we can move here next year. I want to get anywhere between 1 to 10 acres, and I want to build a facility on there. And it's going to start at 20 foot by 40 foot, but it's probably going to be bigger. And half of that, 20 by 20 by 15, is going to be a retix room. I want to build a room like you walked into Southeast Asia where these snakes are found, and I want a giant mainland Siloaces or um, the Philippine uh, reticulated python in there. So, and then the rest of the room is going to just be these cages I build all wrapped around to where you can come in, uh, book a private tour to see some of the most beautiful, maybe some of the most endangered animals that we have here. And there's going to be a bunch of common ones in there too. Um, Outside, I'll have a pond where you can walk over the bridge and take a pole and put some chicken or something on there and feed crocodiles that way. Give people that experience. I'll have another building that I could take in rescues and get them up to health, make sure they're disease free, make sure they have no parasites, nothing like that, and then adopt them out um, to somebody that's really going to take well good care of them, and always have that door open so if anything in the future happens, the animal can I always take the animal back. I'll be a hobby breeder. Like I said, hopefully my female's pregnant. She is swelling up pretty good. I've seen them locked quite a few times. So cross fingers and hope. I will be a hobby breeder. And then the educational part, I do want to educate. I like on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I want to educate about these animals, do these calls, kind of take you along on these calls that I do. Um, or even do birthday parties, schools, whatever. If I could maybe get that person to change their mind, a good snake's a dead snake, to, hey, these things aren't as bad as I think they are, and make them understand, then hey, that's what I want to do. Also, if you want a cage built and you're in my area, I'm in Southeast Oklahoma, Durant, I'll build you a cage. My 4 foot by 2 by 2s cost $250, and you can pick any color you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be able to do that. So
Cool. That's a lot. That's gonna. I think it's an exciting future then. And one thing too, I just hearing you talk about bringing us along on the retrievals or the rescues, we'll call them, or the relocations. I guess I see so many YouTube channels now that are the classic like POV. They have a camera on their head or
yep.
on their hat, and they're doing like. There's one guy that he's like a mobile mechanic, so he just shows up on people that are broke down on the road, and I'm just watching this guy do like basic. I don't even know what I'm watching because I'm not a mechanic at all, but for some reason it's interesting. So I imagine that would be a really cool feature of the channel is bringing us to those relocations and just having us have a point of view of what you're doing. And maybe that already exists somewhere, but not that we don't need more. I think that would be a really cool thing.
There's quite a few pages out there like the Rattlesnake Solutions out there in Arizona.
Yes,
That's a group I love following there. I've got some of their merch and all that stuff. So that's another channel that takes you along. I kind of do that because a lot of places I go, they don't want me filming their property, which I completely respect their privacy. I'm not pushing nobody's buttons or anything like that. But yeah, I take you along. And a lot of times I use my phone, but I'm going to be using my GoPro where I can attach it to my snake hook or I can attach it to my windshield. But also I'll be taking people along on my herping trips too because I do a lot of road cruising.
Cool. Apparently Oklahoma's great for herping.
Yeah, it is. Like you get me out west, I can find you a rattlesnake in 10 minutes.
Wow. That's awesome.
So, down here we have cane brakes and then we have the yellow-faced timber rattler too. You can look on my Instagram and see the stuff I catch. I will always post pictures on Instagram, and I'll show you this one. This is when I was trucking.
Oh wow, you took that photo.
Yeah. I caught that by Roswell, New Mexico.
That's cool.
So, yes, I go herping in my semi truck.
So you'll just pull over and flip some rocks?
No. When I see them on the road, I'll stop in the road and I'll catch them. Now, I've held trucks up before for a snapping turtle.
That's cool.
There's a sticker on the back of my SUV that says, "I stop, I brake for reptiles," and people's learned that. Don't follow too close.
Yeah. Because you will slam those brakes.
Yeah, I've almost sent my wife into the dash a few times, stopping for jump bungee cords. Because when we go herping, we take our kids along with me. I got three kids, and I'm getting them just like I told you. My Western rat is for my daughter. She's 6 years old. My son, he's about to be three. He's held a bunch of my animals, same as my youngest daughter. She'll be two in October. Um, they were all petting the Savannah monitor that's in the house right now for quarantine.
That's awesome.
So I'm getting my kids interested in these things. My wife loves tarantulas, rainbow boas, and Burmese pythons, and she loves her red-tailed boas. So I got a wife that loves these animals. It's just I'm more into it. I'm down in the rabbit hole more than what she is.
Yeah.
But
Awesome. Well, Chris, I really enjoyed this conversation. Like, I think you're sort of a salt of the earth kind of guy where you're super honest and you're willing to help and share information, which I absolutely love. Is there anything that we didn't say today that you wanted to mention before we wrap up? After that, I'll get you to plug all your channels because I want to make sure people know where to find you. But is there anything either that we didn't mention that you want to make sure is said? And if not, that's totally fine.
I got more stories back when I was a teenager when of keeping animals. Like my biggest count of keeping animals, I've had something like 43 or 45 reptiles when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
And building these cages started when I was 13.
Okay, so you've
So,
been doing that sort of model for like you must be
yeah,
around my age, I think. Maybe you're a little bit younger. How old are you?
33.
30. Okay, so we're identical. We're both
Yeah.
33. Okay,
When
so
wa-
you
is your birthday in July?
no, I'm in December. So I turned
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
you're I guess you're turning 34 next,
Yeah,
right?
I'll be
Obviously
turning
next.
just a few hours after 4th of July.
Oh, okay, cool. So you're exactly basically 6 months older than me. So yeah, so
Yeah.
you've been doing this for a long time.
Oh yeah, very long time. I'm crazy about reptiles. I don't care if I see a snake and I know what it is, I'll dive on it. I've dived on turtles. I've jumped out of boats after soft-shell turtles. I've jumped out of cars for reptiles. I have shoved my hand up underneath an old camper for a mountain boomer, which is a eastern collared lizard. After we lifted, we found a big old rattlesnake under there. I've done things that I've like now sit here and think like I shouldn't have done that, like jump off the bridge after a big old snapping turtle. Um, there's, like I said, I've got slew of stories of catching reptiles and stuff like that because I've been in this forever. Um, I've just recently decided for the past couple years to come on to social media because I got a push from a local friend, Holly from Texoma Exotics. She's a ball python breeder that I think I kind of influenced her to get more different species. So now she's got a rattlesnake and a couple corn snakes and few, and she's got one of my soft shells over there that I gave her. Um, she's the one that pushed me over to start a social media because of everything that I've learned. And I've never learned nothing from going to college or anything. It was all watching nature documentaries, watching Steve Irwin, Jeff Corin. Um, uh, oh my God, I am. Uh, Oh my God, I cannot remember his name. He's a legend.
Is it Mark O'Shea or
Yes, Mark O'Shea.
yes, okay, yeah.
Reading all the field guides. I've got a cabinet here with over hundreds of reptile magazines, stuff that I would get in when I was a teen. If it was reptile related, I'm all up for it. I don't care what kind of reptile it is. I don't care. And it's even going off into other animals. Like I love our native species of animals like possums, raccoons, armadillos, foxes, bats, spiders, tarantulas, bugs.
Mm.
The list goes on and on. I'm just all around an animal person like that. So, um,
It,
again,
it's who you are at your roots.
yeah, it's literally a root thing. Um, when I'm not doing this, I'm with the kids or and doing stuff with them, or I'm out here working on my hot rods. And
I don't know how you have time for it all.
I
You
don't.
somehow yeah.
That's why my Maverick has sat there. I got a 71 Maverick that's sat there for a few months without me doing anything to it because I'm doing this or helping in the house.
Yeah. Well, I
So
guess some hobbies can wait, right? And if it's just a car, it doesn't need to be fed. It doesn't need to, when there's time,
right.
you'll eventually get back to it. But obviously, with 3 young kids, especially with 3 under 6 or 6 and under, that's a heavy load plus all the animals.
Oh yeah, definitely. And but it's all fun. It's been great. I won't change this life or anything. Um, Getting onto the social media stuff, I've made some really good friends by doing this, like with you.
Mhm.
It just took me to reach out to you on Instagram, and it started from there. Um, I talked to Rob's Creeping It Real. I've talked to Dylan and Sky from Flipping 10. Um, like I said, I talked to uh, Phil Gross from US Arc. Every time we go to the NRBC auctions, we'll sit there and talk for a little bit. Uh, I say I met Dave Kaufman before. He's been really cool. Got to meet Adam Wickens this past weekend. I mean, just the outreach that reptiles can take you is just incredible
Yeah,
and all.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
but it all comes back down to we're all the same. We're all just reptile people.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. And can you please let everybody know, like, everywhere they can find you? So, like I say, you're just starting with the social media. So where can they connect with you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube as Reptiles and Oddities. If you're in the Durant area, you can Google Reptiles and Oddities. I have a Google account that has a direct number. You can call me for any rescues, donations, or surrenders you have. Um, and if you're into the car scene, Rockabilly Customs is where I build my hot rods. I'll get back to it. I've got some content recorded where I'm about to make a Durango go flying off a cliff. That
Okay,
thing's
that sounds
been,
awesome.
yeah, that thing's been a headache.
Well, I'll have to check that out because I've been watching lots of car YouTube channels. I have no idea why. Suddenly you watch one and then YouTube starts recommending it to you. I'm like, I guess I'm a car guy now. But it's just I just find them interesting to watch. So I'll make sure that's in the show notes because I know there'll be people that like that as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my car, my favorite one that I have is my 71 Maverick that was passed down from me from my great grandmother. She bought it brand new back in 1971, and it went just passed down the family until I got it. And I've had that car since I was 16, and now it's pushing a 600 horsepower 302 that'll pop a wheelie in the streets. So,
Perfect. That's
um,
awesome.
and again, that car, just like with these reptiles, I build everything by hand. The only thing I've done with that car that I had someone do for me was sew the back seats, the upholstery. Other than that, I've done everything just like with these animals.
Yeah, you're a by the hands kind of guy.
Yeah,
Like a practical learner.
yeah, basically, like I learn with my hands.
Yeah.
That's it. If I start reading um, the words, I don't know, it's weird. The words will start bouncing and all, and it's just I shut up and listen and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there'll be definitely people that can relate to that as well. So, anyway, Chris, thank you so much for sharing all this information. And we'll definitely have to have you back on again at some point in the future. And I'll make sure everything's in the show notes because I know there will be people that will want to reach out to you and you'll probably have some people jumping on to say hi. And I know that you'll get back to them because you're that type of guy.
Yes, sir. Yeah, definitely. I'm not a gatekeeper whatsoever because when it comes to the end of the day, it's these animals' lives that we're
Yeah.
talking about. And I think it's actually cruel and dishonoring of somebody, not if somebody's needing help and you're not sitting there taking the time to help them. I understand if someone's bugging you to an extent, but if they're just needing a hand because nobody else is helping them and all, and they're just trying to figure out how it's like they didn't know to put UVB on a bearded dragon or something like
Mhm.
that. I mean, I'm there to help out whatever I can do.
All right, that is the end of the episode. Chris, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and sharing your stories and getting into all that DIY stuff. I think, like I said, as the world becomes more expensive, this is going to be something that people are going to want more and more, but it's often quite an intimidating thing. So to give us a solution that does not require really any power tools beyond a drill, I think is going to be very handy for people. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure you let us know in the comments, either on Spotify or YouTube, and you can also share it on social media. That really does go a long way to help us find new listeners. If you're looking for more information on the podcast, you can head to animalsathomenetwork.com. You can also head to patreon.com/animalsathome if you'd like to support the podcast financially. And also, thank you so much to Liam Sinclair of Reptiles and Research for editing this podcast. And I think that is it for this episode. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one.